The question that everybody now has is, are we in an alt season or are we accelerating into an alt season? And I want to look at a few things that we haven't looked at in months now, but also some things that we have never looked at before, because obviously that's the part of the cycle that ADA tends to perform well in, where we tend to see some adoption. And is this going to bring ADA to a new all-time high or surging well beyond that? So if you guys are new or haven't already, show your support for the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, that bell. It's free to do. It'll keep you updated anytime there's new content live here on the channel. Now, this is the reason I wanted to make this video is because Ben Cohen made a post yesterday. It said influencers have predicted 183 of the last 2 alt seasons. And you know, he's not totally wrong. I don't consider myself an influencer. I'm just a guy that makes videos on YouTube. But I'm sure at times I have screamed alt season as well. But here I did say a little ahead of ourselves, methinks. And there's some stuff I need to show you guys that is actually giving me a lot of confidence about where we're headed here. But it's a question now of, are we seeing are we going to see a technical alt season where basically 75% of the top 100 alts are outpacing BTC over the last 90 days? Or is this more of our traditional up only season where you're seeing assets just for months and months just print mostly green candles, very little retracement along the way? This is where we get those multiple X's. Okay. Now, what I will say is that just a few days ago, back on the 20th, we actually hit a 55 on the alt season index. It's the highest level we have seen in quite some time. We talked about potentially accelerating into a technical alt season back in March, but obviously we just weren't there from a sentiment standpoint. We got some, negative events, negative news. It pushed the markets down and we didn't get it. And right now we're at the point where over the last 90 days, BTC has moved about 25% to the upside. You guys can see ADA up about 18% during that time. So ADA has to flip this. Many other assets have to flip this, but this is where things can in fact do perform well for alts. One, we're obviously seeing BTC dominance dropping, and the reason why is because all coins are gaining confidence, but BTC isn't really doing a whole lot. And now BTC is actually fighting against this moving trend. And what I mean by that is every single day, this is what BTC is fighting against. So BTC would have to, in order to maintain that 25%, let's say until June 9th, no, that's not right. Until basically the start of September, it would have to increase all the way up to 130K, right? And do we see that happening? Maybe, maybe not. But at that same time, can alts gain ground? Yeah, they can. So that's where I think we are accelerating towards this technical alt season. But then it becomes a question of, are other things behaving? Are we triggering adoption, right? One thing I really wanted to show everybody, excuse me, is in terms of this ETH BTC chart. ETH has been outperforming BTC since all the way back on April 22nd. And that's a great sign. ETH has actually been on a rip-roaring run here. And right now we're fighting against some resistance right about this 31, 32 level or so. And when ETH does break through this is going to be a pretty big deal. Now, unfortunately, I look at things way too deep sometimes, and this gives me a little bit of PTSD. We were obviously talking about the bottoming versus BTC last market cycle and the potential drop that could come off of that. Well, what if we're actually doing this right now? What if we get an actual rejection, a full-on rejection up here, and ETH versus BTC falls down to the 24 levels, right? That's actually about a, 25% retracement versus BTC. Not saying that's going to happen or anything like that. And the other question is, does it really matter long term, especially if that's what our trend is going to be, right? Where you could see ETH outperform BTC all the way up until mid 2026, which frankly is possible. In fact, if we look back at last market cycle, we can see ETH actually outperformed BTC all the way until late 2022. Okay, obviously there was a significant drop there, but that's neither here nor there. But what I also thought was very interesting is, what are other assets doing during that time? If ETH does get this drop versus BTC, what are alts doing? And that brought me back to this chart. And when we're looking at the ADA ETH chart, some people have referenced this. We haven't looked at this in, I think, a couple months here. But we were talking about this actually playing out very similarly to what it did last market cycle. In fact, structurally, like we were showing back here, we did the same thing, okay? Here was our bounce, our retracement, our bounce, retest, bounce extension up, which is right there. And then now we've kind of reached down to this zone right where we were at here. Now, the only downside to this is we basically traded sideways versus ETH for like 140 days. Do I think that's going to happen again? Maybe, maybe not. Right now, again, like we've talked about in some of the other charts, things are working out in our favor. ADA looks like it's on at its basically moment of breakout. We've talked about obviously the stochastic RSI. We've talked about the 100 breach and the 200-day moving average. We've talked about the ADA BTC charts. So a lot of stuff is actually printing some very exciting signs for us in terms of ADA, but there is a chart that we have never looked at that may in fact be indicating, in terms of altcoins in general, we're about to go on a pretty sizable run. So this is actually the total 3 minus USDT versus the total 2 minus USDT. So this is basically gauging ETH performance versus all other altcoins in the crypto market. And what we can see is that there are periods of significant retracement where ETH is just going on a rip-roaring run, and then significant outperformance by altcoins following that. And that is exactly where ADA tends to do well if you look back at a lot of these charts, right? And what we can see is basically back in, October, November of 2020, that is when ETH really started to outperform. If you guys remember, altcoins weren't really doing a whole lot at that point, but ETH started having some pretty big movements, and that caused a significant drop in terms of ETH. But then what happened once we got through basically January and into February? You saw altcoins just rip versus Ethereum. Okay. And that's exactly what this chart shows. So during this period of time, this was about 110 days. And the question is, or from basically where the ETH started gaining dominance to where the market flipped and started moving the opposite direction, where alts were outperforming, it was about 110 days. And what we've been seeing now since basically April 22nd is this exact thing where ETH has just been absolutely crushing it. And guys, we're just over 90 days into this. Okay. Does this mean that maybe, just maybe, we're about to see some significant outperformance by altcoins? It's possible. I'm not saying it's, not happening for sure or anything like that. Wanted to show you guys here as well. Same thing when we bottomed in altcoins back in 2023. If you guys remember, in June of 2023, we had our big retracement, and then we obviously started to extend as we moved towards the back half of the year. And then obviously October kicked things off. And hopefully I'm not moving too fast for people. We just have a lot of stuff to cover here. But that was about 95 days, about 100 days, right? So now we're at about this time frame where you start to see this historic shift, if that makes sense, right? This pivot, because ETH has been running so hot, that the capital starts to trickle down the pipeline to blue chips, to other altcoins in the crypto market, just as we have seen many times before. So what we're doing right now is actually following history. I think it's kind of funny because we talk a lot about this extended cycle. We talk about a super cycle and things like that. And I still think that right now we have a higher likelihood of getting into that than falling into a bear market come October. And part of that has to do with suppression. Part of that has to do with institutional money slightly changing the way that things work in this market cycle. But are we witnessing a similar capital rotation that we have seen in cycles past? And what the charts are telling us right now is likely yes. Okay. So what this is showing us is that right now we're probably on the verge of a pretty significant run in the crypto market. This isn't a guarantee. This isn't financial advice or anything like that. But again, just every time we look back at one of these ADA charts, we're doing what we've done historically speaking. ETH BTC doing what it's done historically speaking. Altcoin performance versus ETH doing what it's done historically speaking. So yeah, I would say we're on the verge of a true alt season, a true up only season. Who knows? Maybe we get some negative news that pushes things down and kind of holds things back. I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller. Again, I'm not Miss Cleo. I don't know what's coming down the pipeline here, but all I can say is that we're again still knocking on the door of some pretty big things. Enterprise, government, and mass adoption are going to move the markets in some insane ways that we have never seen before. And again, ADA has a huge opportunity to outperform. We'll see what happens. So I appreciate you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts below, but have a great day. Catch you guys in the next one. Take care.